Well, he just did my whole talk for me, so that was much faster than I usually do it too. Yes, as I said, I'm going to talk about what we think is a general shift in our industry, and it sort of starts in our industry, or it's at least highly visible in the games industry, but we don't think it has anything to do with games. It's a much larger movement. You can already see it touching many other things. The talk before me, Google's approach to glass is about opening it up so lots of other people can add to it. So yes, there's a general transition going on in many industries right now. At a high level, we think of this as a general movement from control to collaboration. And this affects a bunch of different things in industry in different ways, but I'm going to focus on two here. One is how it affects development, namely how we move from these sort of monolithic sort of development of processes of the past, which can sort of be characterized as, or described perhaps as a dev team hides away and builds something over a period of years and have a vision for what it should be, and they perfect it and they unveil it to the world, and then we all get to consume it as customers. Away from that kind of philosophy and more towards a mode where products become visible to customers much earlier, customers get involved, customers affect those products, and the defining characteristic, as I sort of said already, is going from control to collaboration. And as part of that, of course, the relationship between developers and customers is changing a lot, away from this sort of traditional linear downstream model where customers get to consume things, but that's all they really do, to one where it's more open, where customers are changing parts of the product as they experience the product, and end up, as you're going to see in the case of our product, having a larger impact on the product itself than the actual developers do. We think this is going to have a really big impact on, or it's already having a really big impact on creative companies, i.e. companies who sort of define the value they create for customers as something of creative, like film or game or narrative or whatever, stuff like that. But as the things like 3D printers rise and so on, we don't think this is in any way constrained to creative sort of companies, and it's going to touch a lot of different companies. It's going to be very interesting. So I'm going to talk about this by talking about Team Fortress 2, which is a product that sort of in one go symbolizes this shift, because the product itself went through this shift. So for those of you who aren't familiar with TF2, this is about all you need to know to actually understand my talk, which is, so Team Fortress 2 is a stylized multiplayer first-person shooter based around teams. So players pick one of the 9 character classes you see there, which have various different trade-offs and weapons, and they run around and fight each other over a variety of goals. Today, TF2 has about 3.5 million active players a month. It's free to play, i.e. you can just go and download it and start playing it right away. And it's microtransaction based, so hopefully you'll have lots of fun, and in return for having fun, you'll decide that you'd like to buy a hat. But the reason Team Fortress 2 is interesting is because that's not how it started out. So we first shipped in 2007 on October 9th. At that point, we had about 500,000 players a month. The game itself was about 3 gig of content. We had a woefully small number of maps, 6 maps. We had 3 game modes, roughly 25 weapons or so. And the business was completely traditional, old school. Right? You went to the store and you bought it, or you downloaded it from, I guess, we think of it as old school. You downloaded it from us. So it was on digital distribution, but it was a monolithic purchase, right? You downloaded it, you played it. There was nothing else you could really get from us at that run. And the development team was about 15 people at this point, down from, there was a peak of about 25 people during the actual development of it, but at the point we shipped, we're down to about 15 people. But there's something else that's even more interesting, which is at launch, TF2 was 100% built by us, but now less than 20% of the actual content we ship today in Team Fortress 2 is actually built by us. The community is involved in building that remaining 80%, and they're involved in all aspects of the product. They do design work on it, they obviously do production of assets, they do marketing for us, they do service provision, they run web pages, they run communities, they do a huge amount of work. And this is all associated with a virtual economy that is designed to pay people for the value that they're adding to the system. So as of now, we've paid out about $15 million to community members who have added value to the game as a whole. And that money has gone towards doing things like pay for people's PhDs and funded entire indie games, all sorts of interesting stuff. In short, TF2's an engine for taking all this sort of stuff and producing money. And some of that money is shared with the customers. And that's sort of the premise of what I'm going to talk about. So let's go back and talk about how we get there. So as I said, we released in 2007. It wasn't even released in its own box. Actually, it shared a box with 2 other products, something called Portal that you might have heard of, and Half-Life 2 Episode 2. And it looked kind of like that on the right when we released. And I should jump back a little bit before I jump ahead. So after that, after we released, we spent the first 6 months or so doing what we thought was good service, which was continuously updating the product. We had a bunch of data from our previous products, like Counter-Strike, that showed that the way you pulled new customers into your product was continually releasing new free content. So Counter-Strike, for example, player counts would look something like this. So you ship, you get your big initial spike, it would start to tail off, and we'd ship an update and it would spike again, it would drop down after the spike. But it was a little bit higher after the spike than it was beforehand, and that was Counter-Strike's growth. And so we looked at that and said, well, this is real easy. We just got to ship lots of updates, and then we'll win. So we shipped about 3 updates a week for the first 6 months of TF2, and we're horrified to find that we were doing a great job treading water, but we weren't really pulling customers in. And one of the things we noticed was that all the sort of external news sites and so on had stopped talking about our updates because we were doing them so often. It was just annoying to constantly talk about them. And they were often small, just regular. So what we decided to do was to slow down a little and batch something up. And so 9 months afterwards, we have half an image there. All right, well, pretend the image goes further down. We released what we called the Gold Rush update. So this is the first update where we actually take a bunch of content, we box it up, and we actually create an identity for the update itself. It becomes a bigger thing. And it's the first time we start to see some content. Instead of just updating the product, the update actually has out-of-game content. So we have this web page. We actually had to go and create a web page to do this. Up until this point, TF2 didn't really have a web page. It didn't need one. And so the update within the game included a bunch of stuff you'd expect, a new game mode, new maps, and stuff like that. But out of game, it now had this extra stuff that became interesting. It had this identity, as I say. It had a promotional movie, which became content that third-party sites could embed on their web pages. One of the great ways to get a news page to talk about you is give them a piece of content that draws viewers to their site so that they're financially incented to talk about you. And it was the first time as developers we actually started talking to our customers. Up until this point, all of our communication had been entirely through the product. This was the first time, outside the product, we start talking about what we're doing. This is super successful. For the first time, we get a whole bunch of new customers suddenly coming in and starting to play TF2. So at this point, it seemed really obvious. Once again, we'd figured out, hey, we know how to win now. We just batch our updates up, and we just release those. So we followed that shortly afterwards with a thing we called the Heavy update, which was an update focusing on the heavy weapons class that you see there. Again, it was a big batch of new content, and a few different things happened that are interesting here. So for the first time, we move into a multi-day update release. So instead of just saying on some day out of the blue, we say, hey, here's an update, here's a bunch of new content, we start talking about the update on Monday, and we ship the update on Friday, which later on we learned is a terrible idea because it means you have to fix all your bugs on Saturday, so we move all of updates to Thursday in the future, but we're beginners. On Monday, we released just the community map CP Steel details there, and then on Tuesday, it's the KGB, and so on. So each day, we're releasing an extra piece of content. And so you can't play the update yet. All you can do is talk about it. And so what we're doing here is attempting to deliberately create about 24 hours of content with each chunk of information you get each day, so that we know our customer's going to go, when they see day 2 and they see the KGB, they're going to go, which is a new weapon, they're going to go on forums, they're going to debate. I mean, oh my God, that's the most overpowered thing ever, that's the most underpowered thing ever, they must be kidding, this isn't a real update at all. That's the sort of, so the community has 24 hours to have those that's the game they play, right? In the process here, we actually make a mistake, which turns out to be fortuitous, in that the achievements that we shipped up on day 2, we accidentally only uploaded the image and the name of the achievements and left out the descriptions. And that meant the community spent 24 hours design the achievements based upon the name and the icon, which was a really fun minigame. And so from then on, we did that deliberately in all future updates. So here you see our marketing is starting to become more game-like, where outside of the game, these web pages, while marketing alone, start to contain information that reward attention. If you are someone who's paying attention to the marketing, you know more about what's going on in the game than people who don't pay attention to the marketing. This is really successful, like more successful than we even hoped. We get to news sites basically report on every day of the update. So for an entire week, we get to just own the news cycle out there, and we pull in a huge number of new customers. And for the first time, we're actually able to measure PR, which is also, may not seem super exciting, but in the world of game development, actually, PR is really a black box. If you ask anyone how much value they got out of the $40 million they spent on TV ads, they'll kind of just run away from you. Because they have, in a lot of cases, they actually have no idea. They're doing it because that's something you do. For the first time, we were able to measure this. We could look at the sale, because once we started talking about the update that was going to be out at the end of the week, once we started talking about on day one, our sales would start to increase as customers just read the marketing and started to jump in and start buying the product right away. So for once, we could actually say, hey, that's how many extra copies we sold just because of the marketing. And then we could compare that to successive updates marketing, and we could find out why was that updates marketing so much more effective at selling copies than that one, which was interesting to us. It helped us get a better sense of what were our fun mini games and so on. So in this update also we do something, for the first time we ship some community content. So our game is built upon an engine we've been shipping for years and slowly iterating upon, so the tools that we use to create it are already publicly available. So from the day we released, actually probably prior to that point, customers had started creating new maps for us. And so this is, we go out there, we find out, we look around, we figure out which ones our customers think are most fun based upon their opinions, based upon the data we get back telling us which ones they're spending time in, and we go and we just purchase those maps. This is a clumsy process, unfortunately. So if you want to go and buy a map, you have to first find out who the heck that person is, because often you just have a handle for them, and then you find out they're a 19-year-old in Ecuador or something, and then now you've got to figure out how you make a legal agreement to purchase that content from them. And in some cases, which is worst cases, they're minors, and now you're dealing with their parents who have no idea who you are, what game you're in, and why you want to give their son or daughter a bunch of money in return for something they've done. So this is clumsy. Our lawyers hate doing it. Well, they don't hate doing it. They complain because they're lawyers. But it takes 3 weeks or so. And here and there are a couple of maps we can't buy. The most popular map, we can't buy it just because the process of going through the process of going through the legal agreement just shuts us down, and we have to go for the second most popular map. So that's a bummer. Clumsy, doesn't scale for crap. We'll get back to it. So after that, we go through more updates. One of the next updates we do is a thing called the Scout update, focused on this character, the Scout. And here we do searching for more and more of these 24-hour mini games our customers can play. We try a poll out, and a poll is just the simplest, dumbest thing we can do, because we already have we've already built 3 new weapons that they're going to get in this update. So the only real sort of thing that matters is what order they're going to be unlocked. And so we say, screw it, we don't care, let's just ask community, so they can poll. We run a poll when they do it. So it gives us an easy out. And so this is the first instance of where customers are starting to really influence, beyond just their general conversations on forums that we're constantly reading. Here's where they have an explicit control over something we're doing in the design of the game. Really crude again. We'll get to much better stuff later. So the next really big update we do is called the Sniper versus Spy. And there's multiple things going on here that sort of, our process for delivering things is starting to mature. The actual update itself is a response to customers' desires. One of the things we noticed in our previous updates that we kept doing was that every time we did something that customers really didn't like or thought was really crazy in the marketing before the update had come out, they'd say, this isn't the real update, they're trolling us here, this is a fake update, this must be the Spy update. Because the Spy in our game is a character class that's sort of personified by disguise and fooling and all that sort of stuff. We have a problem, as we're going through our classes to ship, we have a problem in the Sniper in that he's the most, one of the things that happens every time we do an update focusing on a class is everyone goes to play that class, right? We ship the Heavy update, everyone goes to play a bunch of Heavy. If everyone in TF goes and plays a Sniper, the game becomes incredibly, incredibly unfun. And so we had that fear, and we decided, let's combine this. Let's solve this problem. The Spy is a natural counter to the Sniper. Our customers have clearly been asking us to fool them all along. So we actually, this Sniper update, when it goes out, is actually presented sorry, the sniper spy update when it goes out is actually just presented as a sniper update. So day 1, day 2, it looks just like the sniper update. And then day 3, we do all this jiggery-pokery trying to fool customers. We have 8 different content delivery servers out there, and one of the, we set up a different thing on one server that sends out on an image with a sniper standing there, a spy slowly fading in. Every hour we make the spy slightly less alphaed out, and customers go nuts. And it's a kind of a cool thing to do because some customers see it and other customers don't, and so the customers who see it say, it's right there, and they post screenshots of it, and all the other customers say, I'm looking at the page and you were full of crap. And so they all accuse us of photoshopping, and we're all madly refreshing web pages, forums, like crazy. So we've got, it's the first update we've done that's done multiple classes. One of the other things that's interesting here is it's entirely in fiction for the first time. Prior to this point, all of our updates had some communication from us as the developers as part of the marketing messaging. This, for the first time, moves completely in fiction. We have a bunch of, there's a bunch of narrative included. We have comics that explain narrative, all sorts of stuff like that. And the developers recede completely out of the picture at this point. It's also a point where our 24-hour content cycle starts getting much more nuanced, and we learn new tricks. In particular, we finally realize that, wait a minute, when we do our multiple-day marketing releases prior to the update's still not out. We can change code at any point. And so, for example, in this update, on day 2, I think it was, we unveiled the new sniper weapon, which was a bow. And we went on the forums, as we always do after we release anything, and somewhere there's a thread from a customer saying, it'll be so awesome when the pyro lights the sniper's arrows on fire and he shoots flaming arrows. And we went, oh my God, that's so obvious, why didn't we think of that? And then we realized we haven't shipped yet, so we can change that. So we go and change that code, and that code ships in the update as if it was always there. So the customer has no idea at this point that they're influencing the product before it's even out. And this is where we start getting we start realizing, wait a minute, this whole thing is a bidirectional communication channel, and we should be deliberately extracting information from it. So we start seeding things. We start deliberately filling our updates with stuff that's actually in the update, stuff that might be in a future update, and stuff we just made up on the spot and that we have no idea but if customers love it, maybe we'll use it. And this includes things like, so the shotgun on the left is a force of nature, where it's an entirely in-fiction advertisement for a new weapon. It explains how the weapon actually works. It has a coupon there that about, I don't know, some tens of thousands of people filled out and mailed to us in the real mail. That was a mistake. We've got things like, are you in the middle? I don't know how much you can read all that, but you've got a monkey space Manaut up there, which turned out about 3 years later to get an update around him and so on. And then on the far right, you've got the spy looking over a spy catalog and writing his opinions in red about it. And so he's ordering the devices that he got in this update. But there are other devices there that showed up in the product much later, like the camera beard became a really rare cosmetic much later. We've still never shipped the portable Baccarat detector, which is a source of great sadness to us all. So now you're starting to see the point where we have some really tangible out-of-game rewards. If you're just paying attention to our marketing, you now know a lot more than people who aren't paying attention to our marketing. And on the internet, information is power and status. If you're on a forum and you know stuff that other people don't know, and you deliver that to them, that's status. Some forums, like Reddit, have made that into an explicit thing like Karma. But it existed long before those explicit things happened. So there are things in our game which more and more are rewarding those paying attention. There's a sword you run around which whispers heads to you as you run around. If you haven't read our comics or external narrative, that makes no sense whatsoever. There's nothing in the product that attempts to explain that in any way. But it's done in a way so it's subtle enough that it doesn't matter. If you don't understand it, you won't pay attention. It won't bother you, but it's a reward for those paying attention. This is also the update where we introduced 9 hats, which is more here as a historical footnote than anything super important, although it gives me a chance to say the reason we used hats is something that is far more mundane and boring than you might think, which was for the first time we wanted to attach some geometry to our character models, and we had 9-character models, each with sort of 250 animations that had been built without any expectation that any geometry would be added to them. So we were looking at the body saying, where's the only place we can add geometry, which in no way interpenetrates with any animation. There were no animations where characters ever put hands or any part of their body above their head, so hats it was. Of course, the community's obsession with hats later, which came as a function of their rarity, was something that we, of course, responded to. As soon as customers like something, then we're going to respond, and it's just sort of fed upon itself. So the next big update after that was the war update. Again, fully in fiction. We shipped 3 different comics. At this point, we're loving comics because you can do a lot more narrative exposition in a comic than you can inside a movie, and they're a heck of a lot cheaper to produce than a movie. We actually, at this point, we draw all these. As comics go on later, we end up most of the comics going forward are actually done with collaborations between our writers at Valve and artists within the TF community itself. The war update, again, features 2 classes. We have the Demo Man and the Soldier, who are the 2 core combat classes. Excuse me. So we thought the most appropriate theme for their update would be war between the 2. So the comics explain how these 2 friends become enemies and fight over stuff. And for this, we built a metagame that straddled both the sort of in-game and out-of-game content. So there's a web page that was the war web page that was themed, thematically all about newspapers, about the war. And we built these boots on the left there that we called the gunboats, which were a weapon that was designed to be used by either the soldier or the demo man. And we set up a mini-game that was going to last, a metagame that was going to last for a week and a half, whereupon we'd record every time a soldier killed a demo man in the game, any time a demo man killed a soldier. And at the end of the war, whichever class killed the other class more was going to get the boots permanently. So this is the point where the community now, just through their play, is going to have a permanent effect on the game itself. And this was sort of, actually there are a couple of other elements to this. We knew that a bunch of customers weren't soldiers or demo men players per se, but they still wanted to contribute. So we added an extra step to this, which was a propaganda contest, which was sort of our first foray in getting our customers to help us with our own marketing. So we gave them a period of time in which they had to design a propaganda contest for whichever side they wanted to contribute to, and we would go and we foolishly gave ourselves 24 hours to go through all the entries and pick the winning entries. We got 17,000 entries, which is a lot more than we were expecting, and this meant that everyone at Valve spent a day going through entries. We divvied them all up, and everyone got their assigned. All right, you have to look through these entries and rate them. So yes, lesson learned, give yourself more time. The actual war itself was much more successful than we hoped. These were the final tallies. We didn't cheat in any way to get them that close. We were fully intending to cheat if they weren't that close. But they were amazingly close. It was sort of interesting. There was a heck of a lot of cheating on both sides, obviously, and we knew that was going to happen, but we figured it was a war between the cheaters on both sides, so what did it matter? There's a bunch of studies that will show you that have shown that humans really like playing teams. If you just get groups of people to organize themselves around as teams as flimsy as Team A versus Team B, that it's often surprising the degree to which they'll decide how much they want to hate the other team for no good reason. So we're sort of playing with that. It was really fun to see how rapidly the community had fun with this. Within sort of an hour of the war being announced, there were high-quality forum signatures you could download that were showing which side you were on and all this sort of stuff. There was a group of medics that formed a Steam group that declared they would only heal demo men and screw all those soldiers. By the end of the first day, there were all these maps that the community members had made that were highly efficient at killing one or the other. So it was like, oh, this map is a box. If you're a soldier, you spawn in the box. If you're a demo man, you spawn on top of the box. There's a hole in the box big enough to fit a grenade through. So they had a lot of fun with it. In the end, the soldier won. So to this day, the soldier gets the gunboats. So for the first time now, we found ourselves in a place that was a little bit different. Up until this point, because we were going through the classes one by one, one of the games the community played after every update was predict the next class. Which class will be next? We were down to one class left. We only had the engineer left. So we realized that with that question out of the way, we had a bit of an opportunity here. So after we released the war update, or somewhere around there, about a month and a half before the engineer update, we released this movie, which I'm pretty certain won't play here, and I have to Alt-Tab or something. I don't know how to use Macintosh, just help. So, thank you very much. So, of course, the community, there we go, thank you. The community pulled that movie apart. And what we'd done is we filled the foreground, the background, every part of that. As you go across that pan, there was something there that we'd put in there. Some of it was stuff we'd built, but this is a month and a half before the update came out. A bunch of it was stuff we had no idea what it was for. It was sketches that we'd done for whatever reason months earlier. It was things we'd thought about just then. We just filled it with stuff. I mean, it's not distracting as you watch it, so it's not supposed to be something that you're distracted by the background as you look at the engineer, so you sort of need to watch it again. But what we were doing here was seeding, right? We were looking to see what does the community get interested in, and then we went and built it. And so from the community's perspective, the engineer update shipped, and it contained a bunch of stuff that they thought we were referencing in the movie, but what had happened instead was we'd thrown in the movie, they'd talked about it, and we'd identified which things they thought were most interesting, and then we went and built them. So, for example, that robot arm that the engineer gets, that was not a plan for us at all. There was a robot arm on the wall. That robot arm sketch was for a completely different idea, for something to do with the robot army that we actually ended up shipping about 2.5 years after this point, or maybe 3 years, I don't know, much later. It had nothing to do with the engineer. The idea the engineer was building a robot, and that's why there was a robot arm. But the community got obsessed with, holy crap, the engineer's going to get a robot arm. And then someone in the community pointed out, that engineer that you see on the right there, from the day TF2 shipped, he's had a yellow glove on his right arm. Oh my God, he's had the robot arm all along. And they had, like, and suddenly we look like geniuses. So here you see what's essentially a maturing process, right? The community voted on what they wanted. They just didn't know they voted, right? This is a much more fun way. The community, instead of voting on a specific thing, they get to talk about all the possibilities in a thing, and we get to come in and cherry pick the thing that is already, we know, going to be successful, because it's the thing that they're most excited about when they talk amongst it themselves. We ship a bunch of other stuff like a new shotgun and mini sentries and so on in that stuff. Some of it had been built prior and was teased in there. Around this time, we also noticed something else going on. So we've been continuing to ship new maps just because that's easy. We know how to do it. We keep doing the 3-week or so legal agreement with maps, et cetera, et cetera. And around that point, remember, we shipped, I think we're up to like 18 hats at this point. There's like 2 per class or somewhere around that number. And we find we find a forum thread on FacePunch, if you're familiar with FacePunch, where a couple of fellows, or it started with a couple of fellows, Daimeo and Roizo, and then there were a bunch of other folks. By the time we found the forum, a bunch of other folks had jumped in. And they were building alternative hat models. So they were taking our hats, or they were building hats, and you would download a zip file, and you drop it in your directory, and it would replace our hats. So where everyone else saw our Scout cap, you would see this one you'd downloaded. So no one else would see it, of course, because it's purely client-side change. And so we looked at that and said, oh, that seems obvious. We should go buy those things and put them in. And then as soon as we thought about doing that, we ran into a problem where our lawyer said, wait, you want to buy like 30 hats? Do you have any idea how long that'll take us to go through the legal agreement for? And a map is a big thing, right? We can give that person a bunch of money and we can get a fair bit of value out of it. The amount of value for an individual hat, at that point, we didn't really know how much that was, but we weren't sure it'd be that much for a single model that might take someone a couple of days or maybe a week to build. So our existing map solution wouldn't work. So we came up with the world's most straightforward and simple web page, which was a web page called the TF2 Contribute page. It has a couple of things which give you tips and tricks on how to build stuff for our content, and it has an upload button, which you click and you pick a file somewhere on your hard drive and you upload it to us. We don't know what it is. We just hope that it's something, a hat, not something horrible. So the only real thing this web page does is that you go through a 2-page legal agreement before you update. So we just take that lawyer thing and we just automate it in code. That's the whole point of this web page. And it gives us some tracking about who's uploading things and that sort of stuff, so we know who's paying, who to pay, and all that kind of crap. If we well, that comes much later. Anyway, so I mean, right away the response to this is better than we hoped. In about 24 hours, the community gets bored of uploading terrible things and starts to actually upload things we look like we can use, which is surprising to us, to the point where we almost did a blog post complaining about the lack of horrible things they sent to us. So shortly after that, we shipped our first community contribution update, and because we're really creative, we called it that. There was no other fancy name to it. So these are all models that have been created by a customer and uploaded to that contribute page, and we just shipped them in the game. We give a special, unique one to each of the people who upload it, so they get to run around with one that sparkles and says, "I'm the person who made this." So every time they play, they get constantly bombarded by people saying, "Holy crap, you made that." And it works out great. Customers loved it. And we're happy because at this point, well, as you're going to see, we're sort of starved for art resources. So it works really well. We do another one, and we go off, and we keep getting more things. So let's look at where we are based on where we started. So we started in 2007, October. We're 2 years and 9 months in. We've done 11 major updates. All of our classes are done. We're up to 1 million players a month, up to about 130 items from the initial 25 weapons. So the items includes both weapons and cosmetic things. We've got this complex fiction now that has 12 movies and 6 comics and all these web pages with hidden Easter eggs throughout them that tell more of the story, all this sort of stuff. It's worth noting, when we shipped, we had no fiction, right? I mean, we had literally nothing. That we had a theme and a time, but there was no fiction, like no characters or anything. So all that grew post. We have half an artist left. What I mean by that is we share an artist with another team. So half of the reason we have that contribute page at this point is because we have no actual art production on the product at all. Our service model is still incredibly dumb compared to our business model. And by that I mean our service model is let's ship content that's free all the time and make all of our existing customers really happy. And our business model is let's hope they're so happy they tell the person next to them, hey, you should go buy TF2. That's our business model at this point. The community, we've made some progress here. So our community is directly adding maps and items into the game and contributing to our game design. And we're starting to see this fundamental shift in valuation, where suddenly customers are actually starting to value things not created inside the building for once. So now we start to just use the tools we've created to do a bunch of other things. We start rewarding, we look out there amongst the community, we start just identifying things that we want the community to do more of, and we start providing rewards for those. So we have this idea for a community item where we can take any item, like that flare gun on the left, which is an item that anyone can get hold of, and we can create a community version of it, which looks like the green one on the right. And in-game, when you run around with it, it sparkles and glows. And all it does is say, whoever is carrying it, this person did something valuable for the community. And then we just start handing those out to people who are doing good things, providing services, running tournaments, running great web pages, and so on. And this immediately starts to result in community starting threads that are literally things like, hey, let's all talk about what we could do to get one of those community items. We start looking into people who are doing interesting services out there, and we start giving them community items as well. So people who build web pages that do things like backpack examination, so you can go and look at what's contained inside your TF2 backpack. There's stats web pages, there are auction web pages where you can hook up trade and stuff like that, although maybe that's not quite now, I can't remember exactly. We hired the guy who did the thing on the left in the end, and he's the guy who went on to build the Steam Marketplace, so you also get hires out of it. We start looking at the tournaments out there, we start producing items for them so they can hand out virtual goods to reward the people who came first and second, and runners-up and participants and all that sort of stuff. We start handing out wiki caps. We have an official wiki that's not run by us. We just blessed an existing one and we host it. And we provide a web API for the people who run the wiki to hand out that unique wiki cap that the Heavy's wearing to anyone who's contributed a bunch to the wiki. So we see a massive spike in the amount that people contribute to the wiki, and the wiki just explodes in popularity. We ship wedding rings because customers want to get married in the game, and that becomes really popular. We decide that we have specific problems. If you remember, we have half an artist. At this point, we've started to batch up a bunch of maps that look like this, because this is how we build our maps at first. We build them in this gray dev-only texture that we then playtest a bunch, because the map maker can easily move stuff around until we're trivially with low cost until it's really fun, but then someone's got to come along and make it look good. We call that art passing. We have no artists to do art passing anymore, so we say, well, screw it, let's see if the community can do it for us. So we take a couple of maps and we hand it out. We release the raw sources to these, and so we give them that, and they come back and give us that, which looks a lot better. We ask them, we give them this, and then one enterprising fellow who's a map maker says, I was looking at the dates and I can tell Halloween's coming up, so I'm pretty certain you'll want to do a Halloween update. So here, I made a Halloween map out of that thing for you. So they're retaining the geometry that we've tested, but they're just making it look incredibly good. So that works so well, we decided, well, screw it, let's try and do that with our other stuff so we don't have to do any work. So we partner with a group called Polycount. Polycount's a web page out there that's incredibly popular amongst artists of almost, they cross game and film and a bunch of stuff. Anyone who's doing sort of 3D art out there, often they're on Polycount. It's a high quality community. So we work with them and we say, hey, let's hold a contest to build some sets. We've been experimenting with this idea that what do we get if instead of building one-off items, we build a group of items that all sort of thematically connect together. And so we run this contest for several months to build some of those sets, and we get these beautiful looking things. And interestingly, we start to see, and this had started before, but at this point, our customers can essentially mimic and in some cases improve upon our marketing style. They'll replicate web pages that look just like ours. In fact, at this point, it's become a bit of a game. Some people in the community troll the rest of the community by building extremely elaborate and almost accurate looking designs for an update and say, hey, I found the next update from TF2, I leaked it. And to this day, we still get emails from customers asking when we're going to implement the guard dog, for example, which was this really elaborate, well-designed fake update page. Never going to happen. Sorry. So we get all these beautiful things. And we finally launched the Manco store. So the Manconomy is the update which we take the items that have been created by the Polycount by the Polycount contest, and we use them to launch our virtual store, item store. So now, for the first time, customers can actually go and buy things that are in TF2. We take whatever the sales of an item are, and we share 25% of the revenue earned with the community creator who actually built them. Our store looks kind of like that. At the time, I think it looked like this. I can't remember if this is our second rebuild of it. We've rebuilt it multiple times now. Now it exists on the web and all sorts of stuff. The first one looked terrible, so this is probably the second. So it's really successful, much more successful than we hoped. Each of the top 5 winners of the Polycount contest all took home $45,000 each, roughly, in the first 2 weeks. Then now all of those folks are now over into the 6 figures in terms of the amount of money they've taken home personally. And as I said earlier, we've paid out over $15 million at this point to all the different people who have contributed stuff to the TF workshop. So finally, now we're in a good place. Finally, our service model and our business model are aligned. We have a service model of let's try and make all of our existing customers as happy as we can possibly make them by giving them lots of stuff for free. And then hopefully, if they're really happy, they can give us some money back. And interestingly, one of the indications we had that there was a chance this might work was prior to the point where we launched the Manco store. After sort of 3 years of releasing free content, we would get an occasional update from customers saying things like, do you guys have a tip jar? Because I've been playing for 3 years. I feel kind of guilty. I'd like to throw some money your way. And we used to joke that if you're if you're a large commercial organization and your customers are asking if you have a tip jar, then maybe your business model is a little bit broken. So finally, our customers our business is now built around the item sales directly to customers. We also drop them. You don't have to pay any money as well. All those items that you see you can drop. You can find them randomly by playing as well, stuff like that. We go free to play as well, so finally you don't even need to buy the product. You can just play. But that's sort of a non-event at this point. It was, at the point we did that, it was the sort of hard problems had already been solved. And we've got our community fully participating in our system at this point. So the people who are creating the most value for customers are benefiting the most from the customers who are purchasing things from the store. And we've got customers now directly collaborating on the product's direction. So building things which directly go into the product. So we start to just go into high gear. At this point, hey, we've got this all figured out. So we do things like Australian Christmas, which is mostly just my coworkers making fun of my nationality at every opportunity they get. I get mails from Australians asking, why does the Australian in Team Fortress have such a terrible, like obviously not Australian accent? And I say, he's as accurate Australian as every other character in TF2 is as accurate at their nationality. We do a replay update where customers can automatically record their gameplay and upload it, and it just becomes we run a contest we call the Saxies to record those. We get 25,000 entries. We've done the Saxies every year since, and it just keeps exploding. We released Source Filmmaker, the tool we use to do our movies, like a couple of years, like I think a year after this or so it dramatically increases that. We do a charity bundle for when the Japanese earthquake hits, where we sell those hats on the left, and our customers. And we give 100% of the sales of that to charity, and we generate $430,000 for the charity. We work with third parties like Weta to build content which crosses their IPs and our IPs. We ship a lot of hats. We ship a lot of weapons. We ship a lot of more hats. We ship even more hats. We realize there are things in the world that aren't hats, and we ship them too. But we couldn't keep up. So a few things happened in the time we started doing this that surprised us. One was there were no amateurs left. Everyone building content in the TF2, everyone who's building content, contributing to a game, they were all professionals. Every one of them. They worked for other games companies. They worked for the film industry. They were freelance illustrators, whatever. They were all professionals. They were also building content that was higher quality than our work. Than our half-artist work, but actually, it was higher quality than the work we could do. They were prepared to spend far more time on it than we were prepared to spend or able to spend, and they were more in touch with other customers' desires than we were, because they were customers. They knew exactly what they wanted and what their friends wanted and so on, and they were able to fulfill that. Unfortunately, as we tried to ship faster, and we just found they matched us. The faster we shipped, the faster they just submitted stuff. And so they got tired of us being too slow, and they said, screw it, and they went and built their own update. So this update here was 60 different community members got together, and they built an entire update all by themselves. They built a web page. They built a marketing movie for it. They built comics. They contracted a bunch of other artists to go and build just artwork to promote it and so on. And then they basically sent it all to us, and we clicked a button and shipped it. That was really successful. All 60 of them now want to do another one. This was recent. This was October last year. They want to do another one now, but they've got competition. There's another group that now wants to ship updates too. So obviously the problem here is we're in the way. So if we would just... So this is the Steam Workshop now. So we took the TF2 contribute concept and we just bubbled it up to Steam now. So now, if you're familiar with Steam, now many games have workshops. There are, if you played Skyrim, there's amazing things to download for Skyrim. There are many games out there, and it grows bigger every year. And the problems we handed the problems of filtering and voting and all that sort of stuff about what should go in entirely up to the community, and they take care of all of it for us. We've also built tools that let us to ship much faster too. A new game, Dota 2, has a fully automated process except for customers to go through as they submit content to the workshop, and then a fully automated process for us to pull it down from the workshop. So a non-artist can pull something down from the Dota 2 workshop, can click a button or two to load this file in. It's in a packed format that we assembled, and it can be in the product in about 2 minutes, automatically checks it into our source control, and can ship to our customers in sort of 5 minutes. So we went from TF2 shipping about 15 items built by the community a month to we ship about 100 a week in Dota 2. So where did we go? As I said, we started with TF2, about 500,000 people when we started. We're at 3.5 million now. It grows 20% year over year right now. So it has negative churn. We went from that $50 retail box / digital download to a fully free-to-play microtransaction based, and we've tripled our size on disk up to, and you can see we've done 376 updates since release. But more importantly, we've evolved this relationship between our creator and consumer. It's become incredibly muddy to decide who's the creator and who's the consumer in this space. We've got an IP here that crosses a bunch of different media, film, comics, games, that sort of stuff. But more importantly, the IP owner, ostensibly us, produces less than 20%. In Dota 2, we produce about 5%. The community is firmly in the driving seat. They're deciding huge amounts, even if they, in some cases, don't. They're controlling the product in ways they don't even realize they're controlling, because we're seeding so much stuff. We're deliberately leaking things we're thinking about so often, and customers are responding to that they're constantly driving our decision. And so we've built this virtual economy, this engine that's able to reward creation. And it's taking those traditional problems of publishing and distribution, like everything that happens between creating something of value to customers and customers consuming it, and it's taken all that and it's turned it into code and connecting customers directly to creators directly to their customers. And that's the bit that we think is really interesting. As we think of these as sort of scalable engines for the delivery of value, I like to think of the internet as like an assembler language, low-level version of one of these. It enabled many people in the world to reach customers in a way that they couldn't have reached beforehand. Right? Notch was able to build Minecraft almost single-handedly because all those the internet solved many problems for him prior. And if the internet didn't exist, he would have needed an army of people to create boxes. He would have failed. Right? There's no way he could have got the number of customers he has without that problem solved for him. And if the Steam Workshop is sort of a high-level version of that, like, the internet still requires someone to do a bunch of work for you. The Steam Workshop is this high-level Java version or something of one of these engines where an artist who's almost not technical at all can create content that's valuable to customers and put it into the system, and then money just comes back out as a function of how good whatever they've pumped in. Those engines, those economies, we think are really interesting and are going to have some really large impacts on the industry as a whole. I mean, obviously on creative companies, but companies as a whole. For a couple of reasons that are interesting to think about. One is that all us creative companies are going to be competing for the actual creators out there. It's a creators market now. We'll be trying to compete to get you to put your content into our engine and serve our customers. But the more interesting thing, I think, is companies are going to have to compete with the engines themselves for employees. And I think this is something for, hopefully for you all to think about as you finish your schooling and go out there. Companies used to serve a set of functions, and one of those was that you did work every day, and they delivered that work to customers and in return paid you a wage. And when that function is replaced entirely by code, I think it's a fine question for you to ask is what is the company for? What purpose is it fulfilling? Because if it's not doing more than that, it's not actually generating any value. It's just extracting money from you that it doesn't deserve. We're already starting to see that, where there are a bunch of workshop contributors in the last year have left their jobs, quit their companies, and have gone full-time into the workshop. And they work part-time in the workshop. They submit something occasionally, and that funds them while they go off and build the games or games products, whatever that they're interested in, because they've realized that this sort of, as these engines grow, they're incredibly destructive to bad companies, basically, or mediocre companies. So hopefully that is something that you can all keep in mind as you go out there and decide what you want to do for the rest of your lives. And that's it. I'm going to cheat, actually. I'm going to cheat and say one more thing that I'm going to say something that I wished I was told when I was your age, so I'm sure you hear this all the time. It has little to do with my talk. So one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this is because one of the other sort of things about the narrative between control and collaboration I think is interesting is the narrative around success in the control space, i.e. the monolithic. In the past when someone built something, they slaved away with a group of people when they built something and unveiled to the world. It was amazing. The narrative the media always talks about when they describe that kind of thing is one of vision, that these people had incredible vision and they had incredible passion and they built an amazing thing and unveiled it to the world and it was amazing. That narrative, I think, is exclusionary. It doesn't say, it says to you, if you don't have vision or passion, then you won't succeed. And I think that does you a disservice. When I was your age, I didn't have a vision for anything, and I didn't even know if I had passion. I didn't understand passion. I liked writing code, and that was about it. I think vision and passion come later. They're things you build. So what I hope to show you as you think about what I talked about tonight, we arrived somewhere really interesting with TF2. We didn't have a vision for that at the start. There was no vision for that, right? It incrementally grew every step of the way as our customers gave us data and we did things and made mistakes and tried things. So I hope this serves as an example of what I think is a much healthier narrative for people as you think about building things going in the future, which is you can build narrative collaboratively as in groups. Sorry, you can build vision in groups. You can figure it out as you go, and you can still get somewhere interesting. This idea that you've got to shoot for the moon, and take mass risk to get anywhere, I think is a fallacy. I think it doesn't do us. I think it's destructive, and I hope that you realize you can get somewhere very interesting stepwise, as long as you keep worry about where you're going far more than where you're trying to get to. Anyway, that was my little side rant. So, questions? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Okay, so I actually have two questions about Team Fortress 2. I've played it a lot, so I have a couple questions. The first one is that when you decided to make the game free to play, what made you choose not to really put anything behind a paywall?
I guess I think it's inefficient, I guess. If our premise is that our goal with monetization is make customers really freaking happy, and then hope. Our experience as a company has been historically that if we make people really happy, we always make money down the road, sometimes years. So for a good example, we gave Counter-Strike away for years and had no idea how we were going to make money off that. We just kind of hoped we would. And the day we finally actually made a purchasable version of it, we think it was so successful. Our only explanation for it was that I assume this is a result of all those people getting to play it for years and a bunch of them being happy with it. So just within our culture, the idea is that worst case, if you don't know what you're doing, just focus on trying to make our customers happy, and we can't go wrong. Even if you can't figure out how we'll make money, it all has to happen later. So once you build a system where you're converting sort of happiness to money, then I think the idea that you should take some of your customers and say, you want as many customers as you can possibly get in that space. So the idea to say, well, some of these customers, the paywall thing is basically saying you're asking customers to make a guess at whether or not they're going to have fun before they really get to try it, and so they've got to make that payment beforehand. And I guess I feel it's just inefficient. We don't care if you're playing the game and you never give us any money, we're still generating a bunch of value off you because you're making other customers have a better experience. So we sort of win either way.
And the second question is, with all of the community introduced weapons and things like that, how did you maintain game balance? And also with community created items, how did you make sure not to stray too far from the theme of Team Fortress 2? How'd you moderate it?
Okay, there's two answers there. We still did the bulk of the game design. At this point, we're still doing most of that around weapons, but we're still, there's an active discussion about how we get out of that business. So we take care of the game design, so that wasn't too hard. The second one around maintaining the art direction. With TF2 was sort of our test bed. We had products coming down the line like Dota 2, where we felt like we had to do a bunch of experimentation in TF2. And so there was a bunch of us internally who felt like there were things we couldn't do with TF2's art direction, because that would be, oh, you can't ship a pink top hat or whatever, right? That's crazy. It wouldn't fit. But one of the things that you find in this space that'll really makes it hard, I guess, is that anything you do, a bunch of customers will say, oh my God, that's the worst thing ever. I'm leaving this game forever. Bye. And a bunch of other customers say, that was awesome, please do more of that. And you've got to navigate that space. And so one of the questions we had as we were looking at the pink top hat, and we weren't literally looking at pink top hat, I'm just using that as an example to mean thing that we think internally doesn't fit our art direction. And we said, we have to ship a pink top hat. We have to find out if we're right. Because maybe we're assuming that there's a line here, and once we go over the line, everything will go to hell. What if the line doesn't exist? What if the line is far that way? What if we passed the line a while ago? If we don't test our boundaries, you never find out if your boundary exists. So we said, all right, with TF2, we have to try these things. So that we have to figure out what's the, where the line is. So we did stuff in TF2 we personally thought violated the art direction. We got back, as you'd expect, very confusing data.